from Grimsby against Manchester United, finishing 2-2 in regular time. Grimsby Town advancing 12-11 in a penalty shootout that seemed like it would never stop. In terms of recent EFL Cup eliminations against lower league opponents, this is what we are looking at. And this is the first EFL Cup elimination versus a fourth-tier club for Manchester United. This Manchester United's recent history in this tournament. OK, Craig, is this a new low for Manchester United?
Well, in case anybody asks, I was scheduled to be in today. I didn't get in the car, fly in, breaking
I had my doubts, I'm not going to lie.
I wasn't breaking all the records to get in during the penalty shootout. I was on the schedule to come in, expecting a Man United win, obviously, because they're playing Grimsby, League Two, bottom tier of the pyramid in professional football. Once you drop out of League Two, you're into what we call non-league, right? And then it can spiral down from there. Embarrassing isn't strong enough, is it? It's not. I can't swear on TV, but embarrassing isn't strong enough. Just awful. Absolutely awful. Ruben Amorim, do you remember after the Arsenal game? He said, we've shown today we can beat anybody. Well, they lost to Arsenal on that day. They lost to Fulham. Did they lose to Fulham?
They drew.
They drew at Fulham. And they lost to Grimsby. Grimsby Town. He's on his... I tell you what, do you remember Steve McLaren with the brolly up at Wembley? The wally with the brolly. Man United, all right, a few changes, I get it, but a few stars. And by the way, half-time, Agati off. Who was it you that said, or somebody else? What the hell does he do? And they chased him for 60 million, off at half-time. They brought Fernandez on, and I can't remember who else.
And Burmo and De Ligt.
Yeah, they brought all the big hitters on. They should have been 3-0 down before they equalised, because Grimsby were creating chances. There was a downpour during the game, which really, I think, helped the Grimsby players, to be honest, because they were up for the fight. But during the second half, we have this Man United manager on a tactics board, one of these little things with his coaches, right, looking like a right plonker, right, going like that, move, you know. You're playing Grimsby Town. And you're on a tactic. You need to go on a tactics board to figure out where the space is and how to beat them. I mean, the whole thing is just, it's utterly embarrassing. Even if you're a Man United fan, you must be sitting there thinking, this is a shambles. An absolute shambles from back to front, and the goalkeeper, the manager, what he says. I mean, honestly, I can't tell you. By the way, sorry. Well done, Grimsby. I've got to say that. Well done, Grimsby. What a day for these boys, this manager, this club, this little fishing town in England, which is not the prettiest. Nobody really wants to go there, let's be honest about it. They've just knocked out Manchester United in the Carabao Cup, right? Knocked them out, and at times outplayed them and created some really good chances. So this is I don't know what the worst result in Man United's history is. I don't know. I'm not a very historical person. But this has to be arguably it, or certainly up there. That's how bad this is. Can you imagine getting back in that Man United bus and going back to Manchester? Oh, what a shame. What a shame.
Listen, there's a lot to take away from this. One, I'll double down on what Craig said. Well done, Grimsby. I thought credit to them for the game they played, the way they held their nerve late on, the way they held their nerve through the penalty shootout. It was unbecoming of a League Two side against a Premier League side. Credit to them for that. But from a Manchester United perspective, what you saw in the first half, I thought highlighted how poor a squad this is. Because while Amorim may have been able to offer as a defence, well, I made changes. The front three started with Amad Diallo, who's Manchester United's best player last season, Cunha and Sesko, who they spent an awful lot of money for in the summer transfer window. The back three, albeit Fredrickson and Heaven as two of the back three, and of course Onana in goal, yes, to make changes. But still, I feel that offers a little, or could have offered a little excuse, a little bit of cover. The midfield is without Bruno Fernandes is much of a muchness in that it could have changed. Yes, Mount has started the season so well, but this quite easily could be Manchester United's starting midfield four, Bruno Fernandes apart. Then you make the changes at halftime, and you get yourself back in the game, albeit again late to Harry Maguire header. But that changes the conversation around Manchester United and this performance. And had they gone on and won this, the conversation is then, well, it shows how small our squad is, that really some of those fringe players are not good enough. But you cannot, again, just allow the game to get away from you in the way that it did. Grimsby had one rightly disallowed, had another that they absolutely should have scored. Was that to make it 3-0?
Yes.
Absolutely should have scored. And then you kind of flail a little bit, but then, as ever, get Harry Maguire up the other end, and albeit from a set piece, gets an equaliser. So there's a huge opportunity missed. And we were saying on the weekend how much of a difference a week makes in football. You go from a very good performance in a losing game against Arsenal to now you should have lost against Fulham, as Craig was talking. We discussed that on the weekend. You got away with one there. You can make the argument that you got away with well, Grimsby were fortunate with the second goal. I thought it was handball in the build-up to it. But no VAR, it stands. So maybe you want to say, well, Grimsby were a little bit lucky. But it's Grimsby.
Man United shouldn't be having...
It's Grimsby.
Yeah, they shouldn't have to worry about there's no VAR or sort of handball. They're playing Grimsby Town, for God's sake. This is such a gulf, even between a very bad Man United side. There's such a gulf between these boys, between these players in terms of the talent level. You want a positive for United? Brian Mboma got his first goal. Take that. But let this sink in. Shaka just mentioned the chance that they missed that would have made 3-0. And then, say, and I know this is hypothetical, say that the officials had deemed that Harry Maguire had sufficient control, which he hadn't. Let it sink in that Manchester United could easily have been 4-0 down against Grimsby Town before Brian Mbemo gets his first Manchester United goal from open play anyway, before he scored a penalty, then missed a penalty. They could have been 4-0 down. I mean, seriously, against a team of boys that just wanted to run and fight and had a bit of pace, and it was the biggest evening of their career. They might not get an evening like that again, some of these lads at Grimsby Town. It comes and goes sometimes, and you spend a career in the lower leagues, and the Carabao Cup comes out or the FA Cup comes out, and you're playing another lower league side. You're not playing a Manchester United or a Liverpool, so some of them might not get another opportunity, and they wanted to roll their sleeves up and go out, and they wanted to take it, and they did. What did Man United do? They did what they've been doing now for 18 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. They were absolutely awful. And a manager who, once again, plays 3 centre-backs. Grimsby Town, 3 centre-backs. Won't change his style. What the hell the tactics board saying? I've got no idea. Because if you need that during a game to beat Grimsby Town, you shouldn't be in that job. You're screwed. So
Craig has had glowing praise for Grimsby Town, not so much where they play in Grimsby.
Oh, tell you what, the fish and chip shops in Grimsby tonight.
We'd have glowing praise for those fish and chip shops too. Let's see how the Wi-Fi connection is, because Mark Ogden was at Blundell Park tonight.
Not great.
Your reaction to what we saw tonight?
It was just absolutely crazy. I mean, the penalty shootout was bad enough. I mean, I'm stood there with a couple of the ex-United pundits, and they're saying, why is it Benjamin Sesko taking the penalty? The striker, he took like that the 11th or 12th. But look, from the beginning, it was obvious that Grimsby wanted it more. The guys are right that Amorim's tactics, very strange. Again, it just doesn't change. And, when you can't even control midfield against a team from League Two, Ugarte and Mainu just couldn't get on the ball. It was embarrassing to watch at times, the fact that Man United were being outplayed and overrun by a team from League Two. Grimsby fully deserved their lead. United were very fortunate to get back into the game, but I thought when they were back in the game at 2-2, they had to win it. And obviously, Sesko missed a great chance last kick of the game. But, I mean, listen, everyone's going to ask what's going to happen to Ruben Amorim right now. From what I'm hearing, there's absolutely no doubt from the United ownership, the board, that he's their guy. But I think this game tonight could be the beginning of it all unravelling, because you lose to Grimsby, you don't really you don't come back from that unless you start winning quickly. And I don't see how this team wins quickly. So I think this could be the start of the slippery slope. Saying that, they've had a pretty slippery slope under Amorim so far. But I think this is when a lot of the fans will lose patience. There's been a lot of issues before the game about United being ready to let Kobbie Mainoo go. A lot of fans have kind of lost it with Amorim over that, because they think that Amorim hasn't earned the right, shall we say, to dictate that the homegrown players can leave. So I get the sense of a little bit of a little bit of support going away from Amorim. And what happened tonight won't help at all because it's Grimsby Town. It's League Two. They've never lost to a League Two team competition before. So tonight is a new low. And I don't know how Amorim retrieves it because his system isn't working. His players aren't good enough. And there's only 4 or 5 days of the window left to get deals done. And they're not going to get enough deals done.
On that point as well, Mark, given that your connection is okay right now, Craig...
I'm enjoying the background.
Wonderful. He's in a broom cupboard, I think. Craig did ask during the show already where that ranks in terms of upsets for Manchester United in cup competition. Does anything stand out to you, Mark?
I was at Milton Keynes 11 years ago when Louis van Gaal's team lost to MK Dons 4-0. Well, that was a fringe team. A lot of those players, you look at the team that night, never played for United again. And the MK Dons were third division rather than fourth division. Listen, I can't think of anything comparable to this. I think York City beat United in the 90s, but again, they weren't bottom tier. So to lose to what is almost a fourth division team, it's as bad as it gets for United. I mean, it really is. I mean, there's been a few difficult times in Europe in recent seasons. The Premier League performances haven't really lived up to standards, but to lose to a fourth division team, yes, it's the League Two, but it's a fourth division team. That is a humiliation for Man United, and it really is. And he's got a lot of answering to do now to the owners, to the fans, and he has to explain why his system is completely unsuited to English football, but he sticks with it. He never changes. So we have to ask him, why do you stick with the system? What is it with the goalkeeper? Because now the goalkeeper can catch a ball at a corner. And he doesn't have the answers.
Journalist dream, isn't it, Augie? A journalist dream.
Oh.
There's like loads to write about here. Everybody will be piling on, and rightly so.
Yeah.
So even if they came back and won this game, which it looked like they were going to do at the end, it would still have been negative. It would still
absolutely.
It would still have been negative because, as we were just saying, I don't know if you heard or not, but it could easily have been 3 or 4-0 to Grimsby before Brian Mbeumo scored, and so. When you've got players like Mainu, who I know is the big story, you mentioned it, but how Agate? Augie, talk to me about him.
Well, Agate, listen, he can't run and he can't pass. Now, Casemiro can't run and Mainu can't run either, but Agate can't do either. Now, and the problem is, this is the midfield. By playing, it's basically a 2 midfield, isn't it? You've got Bruno Fernandes dropping into that 2, so it takes away his best qualities, and he has to play with Casemiro, who can't run. But the other options are Agate and Mainu. They have no legs in midfield, and they're talking about letting Mainu go because he's unhappy at his lack of opportunities. Listen, I'm not sure about Mainu. I'm not sure he doesn't fit this system, and I'm not sure he's athletic enough to be a top Premier League player. But he's better than Agate. But if your options are Agate, Casemiro, and probably Mainu, then opposition will know that you've got no legs in midfield. And Grimsby Town from League Two knew that as well tonight. I mean, I don't know if you can hear the fans at the moment. They're chanting you're getting sacked in the morning to Ruben Amorim, who's back in the pitch. So, I mean, he won't forget his night to Grimsby, really. He'll never forget coming here, I don't think.
Mark, I'm sure that your arm's aching now, but we've got another question for you. Given that you did
got one of those long, what do you call it?
Maybe one of the selfie sticks.
Selfie stick.
I hope for his
I've just got a long arm.
You got one long arm, but you got one longer than the other, Augie. Is that where it is?
Surely you
like
never expected this to be a loss for United tonight, though.
I didn't expect it, but I knew it might happen, which is why I came, because I just knew that this Man United had got potential to lose anywhere. I didn't think they would, but I mean, I've been to Grimsby before. I was there about 20 years ago when they beat Tottenham. So strange things can happen in these competitions, but I didn't think United were that bad. But in fairness to Grimsby played really well. They didn't lose to a bad team tonight. They lost to a fourth division team, which you shouldn't have done. But Man United just still have enough in their locker to win. But Craig's right. It's a big story. We've got a lot of writing to do. I'm not sure I'm going to get home from Grimsby tonight, but that's the price of the ticket, isn't it? Sometimes.
I was at that game. There's a word that could actually make my head explode, right? And that won't be pretty. Yeah. System. System. No, system. The players don't fit the system. The system. It isn't working in England.
We've gone from 10 days ago, this Manchester United side against Arsenal showing that they could beat anybody in the league, to tonight, Augie saying this Manchester United side could lose anywhere in 10 days. What a turnaround.
Yeah, brilliant stuff.
I've actually moved house closer to the ESPN to come in for moments like this.
Craig made it in time.
They aren't used to these circumstances. They're the more tired of the two, both physically and mentally. They're not used to penalty shootouts against this quality of an opponent. Yet still, they were able to go toe-to-toe, albeit thanks to the fifth penalty miss from Cunha, and then it goes all the way to Mbeumo, which was, 12th or 13th at that point. And credit to them, because they missed one penalty in that 12 or 13. And I thought, again, you see the fans' reaction, justified, you know how much it means, and it was absolutely deserved.
I've been in, and Shaka will have as well, I'm sure, but as a goalkeeper, it's maybe slightly different. But I've been in that scenario as a Chelsea player and as a Celtic player in Scotland. You're the big club, and you go to some of these lower league grounds, and you're kind of like a little blasé about it, and then you come out and the game starts, and before you know it, your goalie's having to make 2 or 3 saves because they've come out like a house on fire. It's the big moment, and you as a player go, whoa, right, hold on, hold on, we need to switch on here, right? Because that attitude gives them a chance, and you just feel that maybe there was, again, even though with the changes, there was a bit of swagger about United tonight. We're Man United. We're you know, we're spending all this money. We're just going to pitch up and beat Grimsby Town. And sometimes that can be your undoing. I've had those moments where I think, my God, these guys are actually better than what I thought. They're not good enough in the end if you put your foot on the gas. But they're sometimes better than what you think. And if you're just a little bit off, you give them a chance to take it. That's what Grimsby Town did. They took their big opportunity, albeit it was via penalties at the end. But again, it's moments like this for players that are probably, and I keep saying this, you know, most players that play the game don't get to play at the level that we were able to play at. Unfortunately, most, you know, guys are playing down the lower leagues or the Championship or below, and they never make that jump. You see how tough it is for teams to come from the Championship at times into the Premier League and then get suckered straight back down. It's the same for players. It's a big, big step to move up the divisions. And so for these boys, they don't have, most of them, and I'm not being disrespectful, they don't have the talent level. They're probably never going to see those big movies in the Premier League. And so you get your one opportunity as a player, and you either fold because you're too nervous, or you take it. And we saw those scenes at the end with the fans on the ground, albeit Man United are pretty much dross these days, even spending all that money. Doesn't matter to these guys. They've beaten Manchester United, the club, and that's been their big moment.
But that's the arrogance about Manchester United here, because to your point, yes, you fold. If you will fold if the opponent, and in this case Manchester United, gives you a reason to fold. If they give you a reason to believe in yourself, you take it. And Manchester United, just to come out in the way that they did, and give Grimsby every reason to believe that they could get a result here, is on them. And I can't help that. It just smacks of arrogance, because these players have to know better than going to lower league opponents and feel that all you need to do is turn up. All you need to do is put on your shirt, and the result is determined. And some of that arrogance, Craig pointed it out, came out during the penalty shootout with Maguire and Bruno Fernandes.
You know, we're probably not going to hear from Ruben Amorim during this show. We may not. I would imagine not. I wonder if he's thrown anybody under the bus after today's game. I wonder if he's taken responsibility. But when you play these strong arm tactics that he has with quite a lot of players, he says, I'm the man, you're out, you're out, you're out, I'm making these changes, I'm doing this. That's all very well. But you've got to get results. Because if you're a Man United fan, can you trust? You can't trust this team. Right? You just can't at the moment. I don't know when we will. Can you trust the manager to make the right decisions? There's no evidence since he's been at the club that you can trust him to make the right decisions. Yeah, like, you know, Garnacho may have an attitude, Rashford may have an attitude, whoever. I don't know. But he's making those decisions whilst not getting results. That's not a good fit. That is not a good fit. Because the board start looking at the manager. Say, look, how he's you know, if you're a board member, if you're Jason Wilcox who played the game, you're Omar Barada was at Man City, and there are others. You're sitting there at recruitment level before you even get to the financial gurus, and you say, this guy's totally inflexible. Totally. I said on the show the other day, I think it was Sunday, I believe it was, or whatever day. I've never known a top flight manager, ever known a top flight manager that won't swallow his pride and make changes.
Yeah.
None. None. Now, there might not have been wholesale changes, but there were changes. He never came out. Sir Alex Ferguson, Arsene Wenger, Jose Mourinho, Carlo Ancelotti, Antonio Conte. Go through the list. I don't give a damn. Go through the lot. Not one of them has ever come out and said, that's the way we're playing, end of story. That's it. That is it. Nuts and bolts. That is it. Not one of them. The greatest managers that have ever managed the game, not one of them. That's basically what this guy is saying. This is it. This is it. And I'm not changing. And I've said all along, when you don't make changes, if you're scouting Man United, right, on a weekly basis in the Premier League, you know, whatever team's playing Man United next week, it's the easiest scouting report and tactical analysis leading up that you're ever going to get. Because they've got three at the back, they've got two wing-backs, got two in midfield, they've got two narrow in behind the striker. There's no surprise element. There's no flexibility. And that makes it easier, not for Grimsby Town, but that makes it easier for the bigger teams to go, tell you what, that's where we'll try and pinpoint. That's where because they're going to leave space there, they'll leave space there, they'll look for the diagonals. Shaq, it's just totally inflexible, and I cannot get my head around it.
And the thing is, I'm not sure how it gets an awful lot better. Yes, they're linked with a young goalkeeper to come in, but I'm not sure.
That's obviously the goalkeeper, Onana, tonight, instead of Altay.
Two big mistakes from Onana tonight. And I've sat here and make the argument that I'd have Onana over Altay. On this performance, I'm not so sure.
You might as well leave the both of them in Grimsby.
It was. Listen,
buy them a house.
It was two really basic mistakes from Andrew Onana, who I've supported in the past year. But you're bringing in a young goalkeeper named since now 23 years old, in behind a back you expect.
Is this the Belgian boy?
Belgian, yeah.
Who, by the way, did you hear the other day? They said he's not very good at crosses.
With this back three, coming into a back three that don't quite understand the system, and was exposed again today. Now, if Onana, with his experience, playing in Italy, playing in the Eredivisie, can't figure out this back three, I'm not sure how a kid coming in does. All that being said, the other thing that I'm kind of looking at, and you know, Oggy touched on it, is about questions about Amorim and his future. Now, I'm with Oggy in that I don't see Manchester United, their board, making any major decisions around him anytime soon.
No.
But Manchester United next have Burnley at home.
And then?
Then they go into the international break. Then they're away to Manchester City and at home to Chelsea. Now, Manchester United come out of the... Well, they have to beat Burnley.
Yeah.
Have to. Otherwise, what happens from there and in is almost irrelevant at this point. If you cannot beat Burnley at home, then we have to have a whole new conversation. But then you have transfer window closes, and you have Manchester City away, Chelsea at home. You're on the wrong side of two hidings in those. And again, the conversation is totally different. So while I'm with Oggy fully here, I think the next 3 games, albeit over what will it be, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, given the international window, determines the rest of this season, determines whether we hear from Amorim that this is the worst Manchester United team that he's seen again. It changes so much of the perception and the conversation around him and this team.
Who said that?
Last year.
The worst one.
Last year, Amorim said at some point, I think this could be the worst Manchester United team I've seen.
Well, that was a quick change because he went from there to we can beat anybody.
That's right. It was around Christmas time, the New Year. I can't remember exactly when it was. But Amorim said that about his own team.
Yeah,
do you mind if I go now? I mean, it was only a cameo role.
Yeah, that's all you come in for.
No, we've got more for you.
I only came in. I wasn't on this good.
There was more cup action. These are some of the results that stand out. Obviously, the biggest of them, Manchester United's loss to Grimsby Town. Fulham beat Bristol City. Brighton beat Oxford United.
All the other Premier League teams,
they won against the lower opposition. Yes, that is what happened elsewhere in the Carabao Cup. Bayern into the next round, and the draw for the second round will be taking place on Sunday. But yes, it came close to being a Bayern exit today, Mr. Wiesbaden expert.
Not from a Wiesbaden expert.
You are now.
But credit to Bayern at least getting the job done. But at 2-0, you thought they should cruise, and Vincent Kompany, both Vincent Kompany and Harry Kane said as much, and you expected them to. Vincent Kompany in particular would be disappointed by it. The conceding of those 2 goals, the manner of it, I thought was just simply amateurish. from a defensive perspective. And Vincent Kompany, as a centre-half himself, would know that and recognize that you can't be making those mistakes. You get away with it against lower league opposition, but kind of given where Bayern expect to be competing, you won't ordinarily. And for Wiesbaden in the Cup, as usual, at home against higher league opponents, they don't come much bigger than Bayern Munich. And I thought they made a good account of themselves. Defended really well in the first half and at least kept it to 1-0. Then even when the second goal goes in, right after the break, they still do what kind of got them to that point in defending well, deep, and knowing that they could hurt Bayern Munich on the counter-attack. And that's what they did, aided by poor defending. Credit to them. The fans had to be very happy with everything they saw tonight. In the end, heartbreaking, given Harry Kane in, the 94th minute was their undoing.
You should get overtime today, and lots of it. I was over there behind the cameras watching Man United unfold, and I tell you what, Shaq was impressive. He just kept churning it out, and I thought we were going to have 50 penalties. And he was going to have to go for another half hour.
We've only got one more day to wait for the schedule to see if we'll wheel him back out for more Bundesliga and German football coverage this
Wiesbaden,
weekend.
I think you'll find him in Wiesbaden if that's even a place. With a scarf.
It is a place.
Send them there.
Yes.
Send them over.
But they do not have a place in the Pokal this season. They were knocked out by Bayern Munich. We will be back to league football in Germany this weekend. It's a big one on Friday. It is the Hamburg derby. Hamburg back in the top flight, taking on St. Pauli. Bayern are away to Augsburg, who they have had some struggles against in recent seasons. All of these games will be available, as always, on ESPN+. And so the front cover of Marca, extreme competition, and in the small print, it's the two players, Vini and Rodrigo, fighting for their place on the left wing, as we now welcome in Alex Kirkland, our Madrid correspondent, to talk more about this Vini-Rodrigo conundrum. How is it going to play out, Alex?
Well, I think the first thing it shows is that Xabi Alonso has the status, the authority, the personality to take this kind of decision. And this one, you have to say, it worked out. Starting Rodrigo did pretty well. Vini comes off the bench and scores and provides an assist as well. It's pretty much best case scenario. I mean, going forward, let's see. This is the situation right now, is that you've got two players there who are going to play on the left. That's Vini Jr.'s best position. It's where Rodrigo wants to play. Rodrigo told Xabi Alonso, I want to be considered on the left. I'm not comfortable on the right. I don't feel I'm at my best there. And so you've got these two options on the left wing. And it's not a bad situation in that sense for a coach to have two players of that caliber competing for one spot. Of course, the ideal is that they get kind of the best out of each other, and that competition is good for them. It's hard to see it working out in the long term, because ultimately these are two players of a caliber who are both going to want to be playing, if not every week, almost every week. But on the very limited evidence we've had so far, which is one game, the game at Oviedo, like I say, it went pretty well. I think in a way, Rodrigo, I sort of admire the fact that he sort of backed himself. He's gone to the coach that I want to play on the left-hand side. He knows that Vini Jr. is there, a player who, just a year ago was named either the best or the second best player in the world, depending on which award you pay attention to. And he's backing himself, despite that competition, to be able to get in the team and contribute. And like I say, I kind of respect that in a way.
What do you think?
Well, Alex, why has the Rodrigo, unless I've missed him, why is the Rodrigo situation taking a full 180? It seemed like he was on his way, he was not and all of a sudden he's sort of back in the mix. Is that because he's shown the attitude, or has Xabi Alonso changed his mind, or does nobody want to pay the money for him?
Yeah, I think it's both of those things, to be honest. I think the big thing is, as you say, where are the offers? That's been the question we've been asking all summer. Who was going to come in and offer the kind of deal in terms of whether it's a transfer fee, in terms of the wage package that Rodrigo and Real Madrid were willing to accept? There weren't many possible destinations. We've seen, City being talked about as a possible option, but if Savinho stays there, it looks like he is staying there. There's no space there for Rodrigo. We saw, Arsenal talked about as a possible option, but they've gone and brought in Eze, and there's no vacancy there either. So there are always, like I say, a limited number of places that Rodrigo could go. None of those clubs have come forward and made a concrete offer, and therefore he's here. And so I think Rodrigo has probably made the smart move, rather than being we've seen other players, haven't we? Someone like Isaac at Newcastle this summer, making a very public stand saying, I want to leave. Rodrigo hasn't done that. He's kind of kept his head down and he's worked hard, and he's been given a chance by Xabi Alonso. So I think it's just, It's just the circumstances, really. He's here. There isn't an offer that makes sense for him or for the club. And so, unless that changes, he's going to be here. And if he's going to be here, let's try and get the best out of him.
There's still a lot to learn about this Real Madrid side, isn't there? Because, we know Barca, we know there's been less changes. The manager's been there, more continuity. But there's still a lot to learn about this Real Madrid side. They played Osasuna. Wasn't great. Mbappe scores a penalty. Osasuna really don't do any attacking. They had no desire really to take any sort of the game to Real Madrid. And then you play Real Oviedo, a team that were promoted, and it was an emotional day for the home crowd. But let's be honest, they're going to be one of the teams that are fighting relegation probably in La Liga. So they've got 2 wins, but there's an awful lot to learn about how much progress, if any, this team is going to make under Xabi Alonso, because the 2 teams they've played, what we've learned, in a sense, is that he's not frightened to make decisions. That we absolutely know that. Would he drop Mbappe? That's a different kettle of fish. But I think Vinicius Junior was a big enough target from Trent Alexander-Arnold was a big enough target for him. But I think there's a lot of work still to be done. Look, 6 points is good, but we're still very much in the learning process about how far, if at all, he's taken this Real Madrid side forward to put on, a legitimate title race with Barcelona, who are still no doubt the favourites to retain the title.
The odd thing for me with this Rodrigo situation, and I get it, Rodrigo wanting to back himself, I feel at times players kind of do that to their own detriment. Let's be honest, getting a nod against Oviedo, as Craig said, who will not be Real Madrid's sternest test during the course of this season, is one thing. But Vinicius Junior is, I am willing to bet my mortgage on, is going to get the nod in the bigger games during the course of this season. Now, if Rodrigo kind of says, I want to play left, or that's my preferred position, then you're going to find yourself on the bench for those big games. And what surprises me in Rodrigo not pushing a little harder for his own move, and I'm not saying doing an Alexander Isak, I'm not saying that at all, but kind of given where we are and given what's to come next year in the World Cup, and that they're both Brazilian, Rodrigo could be kind of scuppering his own chances of featuring for Carlo Ancelotti, somebody who also had that same problem and also lent Vinicius Junior on that left-hand side. So for me, I certainly am surprised, and to Alex's point, as much as you see the Savinho deal, prospective transfer to Spurs not going through because Rodrigo, Manchester haven't been able to tie up things with Rodrigo, I thought that a little surprising. I thought he'd be a little bit more kind of willing to bend.
So given that Craig did mention as well Trent Alexander-Arnold also being dropped against Oviedo and Carvajal getting the nod there, is it a similar situation, Alex?
Yeah, I don't think there's as much surprise about that here in Spain as perhaps there is outside of Spain. We shouldn't forget what an amazing player Dani Carvajal is, what a big, important character he is in the Real Madrid dressing room as well. Now, of course, he was out for most of last season with a very serious knee injury. We didn't know in exactly what condition he'd come back, but he's come back and he looks very, very good. And look, this was never going to be the case. Trent was kind of the guy in pole position because he played. Well, Carvajal wasn't fully fit in the Club World Cup, and he played the first game of the season. But this was never going to be Trent coming in and being automatic first choice, and Carvajal being relegated to the bench. It was always going to be competition for places between these 2 top players, and that shouldn't be a surprise. And like I say, Carvajal, still a really good player, still a really important member of the dressing room, one of the club captains as well. And he was and also the kind of character he is, the kind of competitor he is. He was never going to sort of give up his place and accept that Trent is first choice. That was never going to happen. So I think it was always going to be a contest, and pretty much, on level kind of footing, 50-50 between these 2 to be in the team. I maybe didn't expect Carvajal to come back in and be starting quite so soon. I thought it might happen in a week or 2 or maybe a month, but it's already happened. And I think it's just going to depend on the game, on the opponent, on form, on fitness, on all of those factors. But I wouldn't be at all surprised if Carvajal starts lots of games at right back. And then the question, of course, is, does Xabi Alonso see Trent as only a right back, or can he see him fitting into the team somewhere else, either further up on the right or in midfield? So far, at least, we haven't seen any signs of that, but I don't think we can rule it out either.
I wonder if Alexander-Arnold had that in his mind when he's taking this move, or whether he thought it was going to be smooth sailing for him. He has to know as a player what Danny Carvajal's all about. And that, you know, unless Danny Carvajal doesn't come back from the ACL in a proper manner, then that's the only way that he's going to play regularly. Because let's be honest about it. Danny Carvajal, as Alex said, if you don't really watch La Liga as much, then what you're missing out on is one of the best fullbacks in the game for many a year. Yeah, he's in his early 30s now, but I tell you what, you watch him. One-on-one defending. Hardly anybody better. Still gets forward. Hasn't got the range of passing as Alexander Arnold, but Alexander Arnold's range of passing is some of the best you'll see in football. But Danny Carvajal is, without doubt, and has been one of the great fullbacks of his generation. And what Xabi Alonso's doing here, and I think he's sending another message to Alexander Arnold, is like, I know we have a Liverpool connection here. You've came from Liverpool, I was at Liverpool, that's all very well. But I'm not picking players because we have this affiliation with this great club in England. I'm picking players because I want to keep my job. I want to be successful. And there is no sentiment here. And this was always going to be something for Alexander Arnold to have to concern himself about. Because I remember when he was making the move, I was thinking, what's going to happen to Danny Carvajal then, when he's fit? And how's this all going to work out? That's how highly I regard this fullback. And as Alex said, maybe this will change. I don't know. But that was an early sign. And Alexander Arnold didn't have a great game against Osasuna. He didn't have to do much defending. But he didn't have a great game on the ball. But I thought it was very early in the season just to wheel him out the side and get Carvajal in, even though he needs minutes. So there was, when we turned up to cover this game at the weekend against Oviedo and saw the team sheet, we were like, well, plenty to talk about today, because he just whipped those changes in, and when he made them, it was some of the big stars, and I thought that was pretty ballsy early on in his managerial career.
Yeah, Xabi Alonso not caring too much about hierarchy at Real Madrid, it would seem. Alex, thank you so much for being with us. We will have a lot more talk on Real Madrid all season. Gio Reyna has a new home at Borussia Mönchengladbach. Our Hercules Gomez was able to catch up with him alongside his fellow player at Borussia Mönchengladbach, Joe Scally.
Gio, this is for you. What specifically out Gladbach made you think this was the right place for you, that this was the right adventure and moment in your life to make the move?
Yeah, I think number one, speaking to the coach gave me a really good feeling. Being wanted, obviously still a big club that has ambitions to finish high up in the Bundesliga. So yeah, I think another opportunity for me to also just play, get in the field, get rhythm, yeah, and then sort of get going again. So just a change was needed, regardless of where it was. You know, other countries, different leagues. Gladbach seems that I can make that happen too. So yeah, of course, watching him play week in, week out was more just nice to watch him play and cheer him on and support him. But yeah, I mean, it was definitely one of the reasons why I wanted to come here, was for sure playing time. Obviously, you know, I feel like it's the time to take the next step for me, and also, of course, with the national team now too, it's obviously really important that I play, wanting to come back in and yeah, be ready for the World Cup more than anything.
Gio, you brought up the national team. The call-up, the roster was dropped yesterday. Yourself and Joe weren't on it. I guess your immediate reaction, Gio, to not seeing yourself or Joe on it, what was it?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really be, I guess I'm just speaking for myself. I can't be too surprised if I, obviously I haven't played any games with club yet this season, and I haven't played any even preseason games. So, yeah, I don't want to speak for Joe. That's obviously, he can speak for himself on that. But for me, I can't obviously be mad about it. Of course, I want to be back in, but I only know that's only possible with playing time and performing well. So that's how it is. That's how it should be also.
Joe?
Yeah, I mean, of course, you know, I played the last, I think, 2 years, almost every game for the national team, and then to miss out on the Gold Cup in this camp, of course, it's upsetting. You know, you feel like you put yourself in a position when you play all the games to be there, but in the end, you know, it's the coach's decision. I respect that, and of course, I'll do everything to hopefully be back in the next camps.
Was there communication from Mauricio Pochettino or the coaching staff to either of you about the decision?
No.
Nope.
No.
Hercules Gomez is joining us now. There he is. Different background this time around. Herc, thanks so much for joining us. Obviously, got the chance there to catch up with Gio Reyna and Joe Scally. Gio Reyna obviously looking to make the World Cup for the US next year.
Yeah, he obviously is. I promise there's a little bit more Joe Scally there. We didn't get much of him, but Joe's actually the one that showed a little bit more emotion of not being called up. I think Gio was very measured. He had his eyes and sights set on the 2026 World Cup, but it was I would say, much more mature Giovanni Reyna. When you're 21, 22 years of age and things don't go your way, sometimes, and I've been there and I'm sure the guys have been there as well, you tend to speak out a little more, lash out. He was very well measured. He knows that it's very difficult for him to get a call up, regardless of how high some of us feel his ceiling is, and his, I guess, equity within the national team from previous performances in finals, continental finals here in CONCACAF. He said, I'm not playing. I didn't play in the Club World Cup. I've not played this season. I've not really played much at all. And in the interview, I asked him, and you'll get to see a little bit more of that tomorrow on Football Americas, what do you think went wrong? What was it that didn't go well in the last 3 years, 4 years? And he was very blunt. I couldn't get on the field. I couldn't consistently play. So it's good to see a Giovanni Reyna that's got his eyes set on something like the World Cup, and that is accepting accountability, that he knows that it was on him, that he hasn't performed, and he needs to perform now at Gladbach if he wants to get back on the national team.
But which is why, obviously, and you mentioned there's a little bit more from Joe Scally. We do see more of Joe Scally playing for his team. Well, more reason to feel aggrieved, no doubt, for not getting the call up.
Yeah, Kay, that's the one thing, and I'm sure the guys have been there with their national team where there's maybe moments they felt they've been playing very well or just playing more than some of the other guys in the pool at a higher level, and maybe the call-up doesn't go their way. You're left a little frustrated and scratching your head. I think Joe Scally and maybe some other guys that didn't make the call-up or didn't make the roster for the national team will be left scratching their heads. It's always about comparing, yourself to the pool. And you look at the guys who were called in, and I know a lot of fans are going to fall into the Major League Soccer versus Europe. It's not about players being called in for Major League Soccer. I think it's a lot of which players and the amount of players and the type of player that was called in over some of the guys who are playing consistently at a higher level. Joe Scally's been one of the more consistent, U22 players in the top 5 leagues in terms of minutes in the last couple of years. That's who he's been. He's a consistent starter for Gladbach, a team that's searching, European spots. He's a World Cup veteran. He was there at last World Cup, even though he didn't step on the field. He plays multiple positions. Play him in the right as a right back, on the left as a left back. He plays wing back. He's even played as a third center back. So he's really, I would say, justifiably a little confused, but he didn't show that anger or confusion, but you can tell that it's something that's been keeping him up at light. So this is a player that desperately wants to get back on the national team. I would say 2 guys that are now looking at this next season as an opportunity to make their way back.
Herc, you obviously talked with them about them not hearing from Pochettino when they weren't called up. Is it normal that happens, that you don't get a call from the coach when you're not called up? What was it like for you when you weren't called up in previous squads?
Well, I don't know what it was like for Shock or Craig, but when I wasn't called up, that was normal. I wouldn't hear from the coach. But if you're a bigger player on that type of team, if you're a guy with that type of equity, sometimes you get a call-up. The only coach who ever called me up when I didn't make the team was Jurgen Klinsmann. I had not appeared for the national team in maybe 4 or 5 months and called me to tell me I wasn't going to the World Cup. And this, I'd come off a year injured, and I was totally blown away. Would never expect the national team coach to call me because I didn't make the team, let alone when I hadn't played in months. That's the only coach. For every other coach, it's business as usual. There are certain players with certain pedigrees that these rules don't apply for. Christian Pulisic, if you will. And I would have guessed Giovanni Reyna, with the focus being on him and his profile and just his ceiling. If Mauricio Pochettino realistically thought he could be a big player for him, he would have garnered some sort of phone call. He would have garnered something, about the move or about not being called up. That wasn't the case, and you can see it on their face when they answered no. And for a player, sometimes that's a tough pill to swallow if you think you're an important player. For some of us mortals, that's just comes with territory.
Common practice?
I'm not being big-headed about this, but I've never had that problem.
I've never had that call.
Well, I've never.
Is it reserved for the bigger competitions then when they do call you to say you're not coming?
When I made my when I won my first cap for Scotland, I was never not called up to a squad until I had my 45th or 46th cap when I finished. I missed some squads, but I missed it through injury or suspension, so that was my own doing. So I was lucky enough that during my career, I didn't, my career with Scotland, going to the World Cup in France and the Euros in England in '96, that I was always in the squad and generally always playing. So, but I know guys that are in that scenario, and I also know guys that were playing regular in the Premier League in England for big teams that rarely played for the team. They were always in the squad, and they came to all these games, and were always the 16th or 18th or 20th man. That's almost as tough as sitting at home, because you're turning up and you're not playing. Now, a lot of teams are not like that now, but that's what it was like for us back in the day, because we had a pretty settled 11. But fortunately, I wasn't in a scenario where the manager sort of didn't call me up to the squad. And I don't know how I would have handled that, to be honest. I mean, as Herc said, Joe Scally seems on the face of it to be taking it quite well. I think I'd have been, if it was me, I think I'd have been a little bit angrier.
If I was in Scally's position, absolutely.
He is playing a lot.
To the point, I don't think managers need to or generally do call you if they're leaving you out of the squad. They don't need to tell you if they're picking in the starting 11 or not. You find that out on the day, as it may be. Those things, for me, I don't think are par for the course. But to Craig's point about Scally and his performances, consistent performances at that level, if you're not in a squad, you got to ask questions. You wonder what else you need to do to prove your value to the current manager. And as Craig said, I'd be a whole lot angrier at being left out in this.
I tell you what, though,
the call isn't the issue.
I tell you what, though, and Herc knows much more about this than me, but from the outside, I'm talking about the US, that is, from the US men's national team, from the outside, this is a huge 12 months, obviously. The World Cup's here in sort of North America, most of it in the United States, and the manager who's come in with this big reputation, obviously from managing in England and France and other places, he's not the most convincing at the moment, is he, in his decision making? And that's me being kind. So I think there's a lot of eyes on Pochettino saying, do you actually know, are you actually close to even knowing 10 months out from a World Cup what your best squad is, what your best team is, what your best balance is? I think there's a big question mark that he has shown that he is struggling to come up with the answers thus far. That's how I would look at it from the outside.
Can we answer the question for the US superfan Craig Burley then, Herc?
No, I think Craig's very much a super fan, and he's in the same boat as the other super fans. They're left asking the same question. We've all been fortunate enough to play in the World Cup. I'm not going to sit here and say you shouldn't give guys an opportunity. I made the World Cup without playing a single minute, a single appearance in the World Cup cycle. And then I didn't make the World Cup in the next cycle, being involved pretty much the whole way through. These things happen when there are new faces coming in, but certainly at some point you have to lock in an 11. And if you're Mauricio Pochettino, by my estimation, has 4 windows left, you're behind the 8 ball. You don't have a lot of time. And I want to be fair to Mauricio Pochettino. I don't want to hold his past against him. There are many questions about his past. There's time, at PSG, his time at Chelsea, some of his selections, et cetera, et cetera. But when you're in this boat, when you see that you have a home World Cup, what you have to do with no foreseeable important games in the future is really hone in on who can help you. It doesn't seem, to Craig's point, like he has an idea of who can help him. Forget the 11. He's really going all over the place with this. There are some players who are getting their first taste of national team experience at 29 years of age and maybe were 10th, 11th, 12th on the depth chart if there was a depth chart for them. And some players who are playing at a high level in very big teams aren't called up. And he uses an example of Weston McKennie. Well, Weston had, the Club World Cup and he didn't participate, and we want him to concentrate and get a good preseason with his team. He doesn't go in, but his friend Timothy Weah was in the same boat and he's in. So there's a lot of inconsistencies in the call-up, and fans, I would say rightfully so, have a lot of questions.
And no doubt a lot more talk about it on the next edition of Football Americas with Herc, Sebastian and Alexis coming up on Thursday tomorrow, 8:30 p.m. Eastern on ESPN+. Manchester United superfan, because here is Ruben Amorim after the loss to Grimsby Town in the EFL Cup. He says, I think the best team won, the only team that was on the pitch. The best players lose because one team can win against any group of players. And I think the team and the players spoke really loud today. So that's it. I think it's really clear what they spoke. So let's move on from this day. And I think it was clear for everybody what happened. We started the game without any intensity, all the idea of the pressure. We were completely lost. And that's why I think they spoke really loud. Reaction to that, Craig?
I don't know. I mean, is he going to take any of the blame? He just keeps piling it on the players, which I get. Players need to do better, but managers have to be accountable. I mean, his job's to motivate the players, to train the players, to set the tactics out, which we've talked about, to hell and high water. But he says the same thing most times they have a bad result, which is quite a lot. So, I don't know. It's Grimsby Town. It's the fourth tier of English football, and it's Manchester United. And I think people are just getting fed up of this manager gobbledygook, which seems to be, and maybe, and look, in all fairness, sometimes it's not easy for managers to say the right things with the translation from Portuguese to English, and I understand that. I think maybe he'd find the words better in his native language and it might be a lot clearer. But at some point, he's going to have to put his head above the parapet and take responsibility for results and not keep chucking every player and every team that he selects under a bus when results go wrong.
What did you make of it all tonight?
I know why you're doing this. I know why production's doing this. They want to see me suffer here. I told them I grew up a United fan, but then I grew up
in a great era.
And that's a reality. I grew up a United fan because back in the day here in the United States, we'd get one Premier League game a week, and it was United, and it was during their treble run, and it was how ridiculous that class was and how good they were, and everybody in the United States became a Manchester United fan. That was the first team that I loved, but this isn't the team that I love. This isn't the club that I grew up watching. And Ruben Amorim, it's quite embarrassing when you're going against a team, a lower league team, and you're in penalty kicks when you have to come back and the camera pans to you and you have your face down. And at first I thought it was of embarrassment, and then I realized it was of fear. That's where this club is today. And we could talk about Ruben Amorim. We could go back a list of coaches, Erik ten Hag, Moyes, Louis van Gaal. This is one of the most toxic clubs, if not the most toxic clubs in world football. And that's where they are today. It's not going to take one coach. It's not going to take one new player. It might not even take an overhaul of the board. This is Manchester United today. So if you're asking me what I thought it was par for the course.
Oh, Kirk, we didn't mean to end on such a sour note for you. Thanks so much for being on with us.
Well, when you start calling me a US super fan, you deserve all you get.
We'll hear more from you tomorrow on Football Americas. Thanks for joining us tonight. Yeah, Carabao Cup.
Hold on, let me get my glasses on. Oh, hold on, Man United are not in it.
Wrexham Reading. That's where my eyes fell.
Here are some of the notable third-round games. No, Grimsby, come on. Port Vale up against Arsenal, Liverpool, Southampton, yeah. Newcastle.
Grimsby obviously haven't got the plum draw, have they?
Yeah, no.
They got one of those draws.
Yeah, one of the ones
Wrexham
that's
Reading.
not that exciting. Lincoln against Chelsea. Yeah, Wrexham against Reading. Yeah. We know who Shaq's supporting.
Phil Parkinson.
Grimsby gets Sheffield Wednesday.
Well, that's still they're a trouble club. Yeah. Sheffield Wednesday at the moment. Stevie's former club, obviously used to be in the Premier League. Played against them many times, Shaq and I. But just to go back briefly to this, it doesn't matter if you think the United balance in midfield isn't great. Sorry to sort of talk over the graphic. It doesn't matter if you think they're struggling in the midfield. It doesn't matter if you think the two goalies they got are not the best. It really doesn't matter. They've still got some quality players. The whole crux of this evening is they should have been absolutely miles good enough to tease and tantalise this Grimsby team. These Grimsby players, Stevie talked about it during the Newcastle game with Liverpool, when Liverpool were a man up, and they didn't do it. Liverpool should have been playing two-touch. Bang, 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 bang. Newcastle wouldn't have got near to them. That's what Man United should have been doing to Grimsby Town. These Grimsby boys should have been, their tongue should have been hanging out after 20 minutes thinking, Jesus, we can't get a kick of the ball. Because this side, not the best side, but this side from the Premier League are just knocking it around. And I know the conditions weren't great, but the pitch was still fine. You've been knocking it around, we can't get near them. But no. And that's the crux of it. They couldn't even do that against Grimsby Town. And that just sums the whole thing up for me. Never mind the goalkeeping mistakes, never mind the missed penalties. The fact that they can let Grimsby Town go toe-to-toe with them in the Carabao Cup, third round or whatever it is, I think sums the whole situation up. And going forward, Ruben Amorim has to, start taking it a little bit more on the chin, I think.
Yeah, it's also very, very early stages of the Champions League right now. This is the Champions League qualification aggregate results. Yeah. Yes, boy. Craig.
No, that's over 2 legs, obviously.
Yes.
Right. Yes, this is the aggregate. This is the worst start, I believe, for a Rangers manager in history. Russell Martin, who was fired at Southampton, has gone in there, and they are abysmal, right? They've started poorly in the Premier League. And also, Celtic got knocked out yesterday by some team from Timbuktu. No idea where they're from. Kazakhstan. And these are 2 monster... I'm sorry to talk about Scottish football.
There's a question about it in extra time as well.
I'm not going to get into the generics and nuts and bolts of Scottish football, but these are 2 gigantic clubs, and it's turned into an embarrassment.
Yes. Embarrassment. He starts the show by talking an embarrassment and he ends the show by doing so. Extra time is on the way next, Shaka, and Craig will be answering your questions. Stick around, that's coming up now. Welcome into the latest edition of Extra Time. We've got Shaka here, who's an expert on third-tier German sides today. Yes. And Craig, who only came in because Manchester United lost.
I was doing the garden, I was digging away, doing the edges, pruning the roses, all that sort of stuff. Hands dirty, the rubber gloves were on. Oh, spare you the details.
Please, carry on.
And I just... Losing to Grimsby, you say? Start the vehicle.
There's a bat signal.
Yep.
The bat phone rang.
There's a bat signal that goes up.
The bat phone rang. Get your butt in here.
Every time Manu goes behind, a little red phone starts to ring.
It's actually a bad deal for me. Because every time Man United lose, I have to come in. I mean, that's a lot. It's a lot of work. It's like 7 days a week.
Okay. Chuck Pasadena, first question. Don't know if you can hear this over the booming internet, but just how cooked is Manchester United right now?
Well, Shaka talked about it on the live show. They got Burnley coming up. Then they got is there an
international break?
International break, which is when managers normally get the sack. Not suggesting it's going to happen. I tell you what, if you lost to Burnley, newly promoted Burnley under Scott Parker, that would be a twitchy international break, wouldn't it?
They can't lose to Burnley, surely.
Then they've got City and Chelsea and somebody else.
They couldn't lose to Grimsby either, surely.
Yeah.
Oh, boy.
I mean, you did look at that and kind of go, oh, Grimsby, we don't need to talk about that, but they can't lose to Burnley, but no, they really can't lose to Burnley.
They really cannot. At home, to Burnley, they can't lose that.
Okay, there's obviously a lot of Manchester United questions tonight. As a Manchester United fan, I've watched my manager win 7 and collect 28 points in 29 Premier League games. Now I've watched him get out-coached by Dave Artell and Grimsby with a quarter of the talent. Why on earth does Amorim deserve another game at my club?
Good question. I think, I don't know about you, Shaq, that they've made a decision. They absolutely made a mess of the Ten Hag situation. A complete mess. I mean, a complete shambles. Winning the FA Cup and they've gone, there's a contract, everything's rosy. When we all sat here and went, now, cut them now, move on. So they delayed that. They then went all in on Amorim, and so they're in a corner. They're in a corner because it's been their decision. So I don't think they'll fire him, to be honest.
I don't think he's going. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. Not that he deserves to be kept, but one, Craig mentioned, the whole history to it was just an absolute mess. And then you just wonder if Manchester United can afford to pay up another manager and then bring in another manager who will want to bring in players of his own to try to fix this mess. I mean, it's pretty ridiculous.
Right, so, go on, Zach, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, just touch on the whole Ten Hag situation and the FA Cup. And I know we're only 2 games into the season, but we were having the same conversation around Spurs at the end of last season. Do they stick with Postecoglou, given they won the Europa League or not? Look what they did, and look how, I know it's only 2 games in, but look how good a start they have made under Frank. And you just wonder if Manchester United missed a significant moment in making that clean break in the off-season. Because then they bring in Amorim in the middle of the season. He's laboured with this team. There's a lot of doubt about him. You wonder if the team is buying into his tactics. Gets a full pre-season, and similarly, look how poor start they've made this time around.
Here's the deal for United, though. When he keeps talking about this system, and I mentioned it in the show, it drives me absolutely nuts now because his lack of flexibility. But when you start talking about bringing players in for a system, and United go down that road, so when you sack him, then what do you do? Because you've brought players in for his system
That they can't play.
that they're struggling to play in,
bring players
and then you
in
bring
to-
another manager in who wants to go a completely different road.
You bring players in to play a certain system, and they can't play that system. So now you sack him to bring another manager in to play another system. I don't get it.
Okay, more Manchester United. What does it say about Šeško that he only stepped up as the 10th penalty taker?
Not a lot.
Did Mark talk about that? Did
You
Mark-
mentioned, I think it came up.
You would think that as a striker, as a big name striker, you would have stepped up a whole lot earlier. I
think De Ligt stepped up before him, didn't he?
I don't.
Harry
get it.
Maguire stepped up before him.
Well, we've seen Harry Maguire take
Zirkzee
penalties
stepped up before him.
for England.
Joshua
etc.
Zirkzee stepped
Yeah.
up.
Seen Maguire take penalties. Took it wonderfully well. But still, before so many of the others, you would think your striker, you fancy him from 12 yards. I don't get it.
What is the biggest cup upset that Burley and Hislop have experienced in their playing days?
Went out to Millwall when Casey was in goals in a penalty shootout. I scored mine. I did. Keller was no problem. Little side foot, wrong way. He had hair then.
Long time
Put me
ago.
off that. I think when I was at Celtic, we may have lost to Clyde. People won't even know who the hell this is. Oh, the fans were irate, I can tell you.
That's in Timbuktu at all, Clyde.
Clyde. Club in Scotland, that Clyde.
I'm struggling to recall any big upsets, but I was part of that Newcastle team against Stevenage. Remember that year where Dalglish said, "Oh, we'll play in." Where was it? Milton Keynes or wherever he said, and there was this big kind of furor about it because
Tickets.
well, they wanted.
Wasn't that when
they
he
tried-
went? Wasn't that the time when he moaned about tickets? And Jeremy Paxman, great interviewer, got him on BBC Newsnight and absolutely ripped him to shreds.
It's not. It was
Sorry, I
it was
digress.
about the ground. He wanted to get the first leg moved to St James's Park.
Okay.
Didn't fancy going there, and so he said, "Listen, move it to St James's Park. You'll get a bigger cut of the tickets, more money for the club." And then I can't remember who had the rights for which television company had the rights for the game. They were like, "Nah, play it at your ground." Pretty sure it was Stevenage. We'll pay you this amount, and there was this big back and forth about it. And we went there and in the end drew 1-1 in the first leg. Got away with it. The weather was awful, pitch was awful to be fair. Got away with it and then went back to St James's and won comfortably. But yeah, if everybody was against us that night, that would have been ugly.
That was a tough one. Did Craig's dad ever head into the Chelsea locker room to tell the manager he was completely misusing him? This is a nod to Joe Bellingham's father, Mark Bellingham.
I think it's no secret that the Bellingham father is a little bit of a feisty character. I don't think that's a secret. However, he shouldn't be down where he was anyway. And no. I mean, I would have chucked him out myself.
Yeah.
In fact, they would never have done that. All this parents getting involved. Parents get involved when you're a kid.
And they shouldn't even get involved then.
But, you know, I don't mean get involved when you're a kid. Parents come to games when you're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and they stand at the side and they shout on and they encourage or they criticise. And that's the end of it. Once you become a professional footballer, there is no place.
None.
There's no place for parents coming down. Your parents, your family go into the players' lounge and all that, where families get together after a game and have a beer or do whatever they do these days, and that's it.
Even when you're representing your sons, potentially, even if you are their representative, it's this still no.
Why the hell's a representative? Even if you're a representative should be in the stands.
Yeah, agreed.
And then he makes a phone call if he's not happy. It's ridiculous.
Whether it's a
ridiculous.
parent, whether it's an agent, whether it's a parent acting as an agent, no, you have no interactions with the club hierarchy, other than on the Monday to call them and ask those questions as agents do, if that's the role. If you're the agent, then you call and you know, I want to move or wherever it is. But you don't go down to the tunnel and question the manager head on like that. As a player, if my dad do that, I'd be so embarrassed.
Yeah, by the way, but don't. I'd say to him, by the way, you're not coming back to your game. You're not coming back to your game. Right, I'm telling you, you're banned.
Yeah.
Well, that's a report that they've banned parents now.
Well,
But it
no,
was
I would ban my dad.
Yes.
I'm banning him.
I would ban my dad.
Anyway, my dad was the opposite. He's down there, Mark Bellingham, I think it is, doing whatever he's doing, because his boy got 10 off at half time. My old boy told me to retire. I'm serious.
Thanks,
This is
Dad.
what I played my 46 in last game for Scotland. So won my 46 cap. It was my one ever game under Bertie Vogts, right? Only played for Bertie once. The other 45 were for Craig Brown. And we lost to Austria and my legs were gone. I'd had all these injuries. I was gone. Right? I could barely get about. And I remember playing and I was like, this is just not enjoyable. And I went up to the players, up to the family room after the game, and they're all there, and I walked in. My dad said, there's a beer. I'm in a beer, and he went, think about retiring. But that's good. That's good, because that told me what I already knew in my head, that it was time to go. You know what I mean? So
Tough love. Yeah.
I knew that anyway, but it was quite a funny line. I quite enjoyed it.
For Craig, is Scottish football becoming embarrassing? 2 top teams, horror shows in Europe this week, and the national team is poor. What's happening?
Do you know, I'm not going to pile on Scottish football because I don't follow it these days. There is a lack of fine, and I saw one of the journalists that I'm quite friendly with, Ewan Murray, covers all the golf for The Guardian and stuff. He's a big Hearts fan. Dundee United played a game recently and there was not one Scots player on the team. Not one. Now, I know in England that can be the case sometimes because all these big superstars are coming in, but there's no money in Scotland for big superstars to come in. So you've got to breed somehow this homegrown talent. You've got to nurture it. Not one Scottish player. And so when you add that to the fact that TV money in Scotland is a pittance, Sky, who cover it, I believe Sky Sports, they'll only pay what it's worth. They're willing to pay $1 billion for the Premier League because that's worth $1 billion. And they're willing to pay whatever it is for the Scottish football because that's all it's worth to them. So there's no money coming in from the TV, which is where, you know, back in the day, clubs generated money through turnstiles, through fans. And they still do, but it's not where the bulk of the money comes, a very small percentage. The bulk of the money comes from the commercial departments and the TV money. And in Scotland, that is very low. And so the lack of investment means a lack of quality, and clubs don't want to spend, because Celtic don't want to spend too much, because we can win the league without spending too much. We don't want to overspend, because they're already winning the league, because Rangers are poor. So the board sit in their hands, they don't want to spend it, want to keep it in the pocket, because they're already getting success. And then they get caught out by a team from Kazakhstan, and everybody's up in arms. So, it's not a good. I'm not going into the details of which players are good and which players are bad, because I don't know. But what I can tell you is, when there's a lack of investment as there is in Scottish football, it is difficult to get out of the mire that you're in unless you're breeding and nurturing really homegrown talent, which they are not, unfortunately, for the most part.
Okay, well, we'll end it there tonight. Thank you so much for sending in your questions.